The old Victorian house stood silent at the end of Willow Lane, its weathered facade hiding secrets older than the town itself. For Eleanor Hayes, 8 months pregnant and newly widowed, it was the only place left to go. The childhood home she'd fled 20 years ago now beckoned with a strange familiarity. As autumn winds stirred fallen leaves across the porch, Eleanor felt something else stirring beneath the floorboards. Memories, whispers, things intentionally forgotten. When the first night brought scratching sounds from the sealed basement, Eleanor dismissed them as settling wood. But on the third night, when she found her mother's hidden diary and the old key wrapped in blood-stained cloth, denial was no longer possible. What terrible truth had her family buried beneath this house? Eleanor Hayes stood before the weathered Victorian, one hand on her swollen belly, the other clutching a small suitcase, all that remained of her life with Michael. The late October wind whipped her dark hair across her face, masking the tears she refused to acknowledge. 8 months pregnant and newly widowed, the childhood home she'd fled at 18 now represented her only refuge. "Just until you're born," she whispered to her unborn child, feeling a gentle kick in response. "Then we'll figure out something better." The brass key felt unnaturally heavy in her palm. 20 years of absence had transformed the once familiar house into something foreign, almost threatening. Eleanor hesitated, memories flooding back, her mother's distant gaze, her father's late-night research, the whispered arguments, the rules about the basement. A car slowed behind her. Eleanor turned to see an elderly woman peering through a passenger window.
"You're Marian Hayes' girl, aren't you?"
The woman's expression held something beyond simple recognition. Was it concern? Fear? "Yes," Eleanor responded cautiously. "I'm Eleanor. So, got your mother's eyes." The woman paused. "Folks around here thought that house would stay empty after what happened." Before Eleanor could question her, the car continued down Willow Lane, leaving her with an unsettling chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. Inside, the house greeted her with musty stillness, sheets draped over furniture like shrouds. The grandfather clock in the hallway stood frozen at 3:17. Eleanor moved through rooms that seemed smaller than in her memories, each footstep stirring dust and dormant echoes. The living room revealed furniture arrangements unchanged since her childhood. In the corner stood her father's reading chair, positioned as if he might return any moment to resume studying his strange medical texts. Eleanor avoided the basement door as she had been taught, instead climbing the creaking stairs to her old bedroom. The room remained eerily preserved, faded floral wallpaper, narrow bed and the bookshelf still holding her childhood collection. Eleanor set down her suitcase and opened the curtains, disturbing a cloud of dust motes that danced in the late afternoon light. That's when she noticed it, a family portrait on the dresser she didn't remember. Wiping away years of dust revealed 5 faces, her father stone-faced and formal, her mother with a tight smile that never reached her eyes, herself at about 7, her sister Emily at 10. But it was the 5th figure that made her breath catch, a shadowy form standing behind them, features indistinct, yet somehow suggesting a smile. Eleanor couldn't recall anyone else being present when that photo was taken. Setting up the bedroom took little time with her few possessions. As dusk fell, Eleanor prepared a simple dinner in the kitchen, trying to ignore how the house seemed to settle around her with sighs and creaks that felt almost deliberate. The baby grew restless, kicking more frequently than usual. "You feel it too, don't you?" she murmured, rubbing her belly. "We won't stay long, I promise." That night, Eleanor struggled to find sleep in her childhood bed. The house's noises, unfamiliar yet disturbingly reminiscent, kept her awake. A persistent stuttered sound from somewhere below, the whisper of movement in empty hallways, the sensation of being watched. At precisely 3:17 a.m., Eleanor woke with a start. The house had fallen completely silent, an unnatural silence that pressed against her eardrums. Then came the distinct sound of footsteps crossing the floor below. followed by what could only be described as fingernails dragging across the sealed basement door. Clutching her blanket, Eleanor told herself it was merely the house settling, the wind, her imagination enhanced by pregnancy hormones, and grief. Yet deep down, in a place she'd kept locked since childhood, she knew better. This house had never been just a house. When morning finally arrived, Eleanor discovered a strange dark stain seeping from beneath the baseboard, near her bed, a stain that resembled blood but smelled of earth, and something indefinable. When she touched it, the baby gave a violent kick that left her gasp. The dusty family portrait watched from the dresser, the shadowy figure seemingly more distinct in the morning light, its suggestion of a smile now unmistakable. The stain had disappeared by mid-morning, leaving Eleanor questioning her sanity. Pregnancy hormones, grief, and childhood memories created a potent cocktail for an overactive imagination. Yet the family portrait with its mysterious figure remained undeniably real. Eleanor spent the day exploring the house systematically, opening windows to release decades of stagnant air. In the kitchen, canned goods from 2003 still lined pantry shelves. Her parents' bedroom remained locked, the only room she couldn't access with her key. By afternoon, Eleanor ventured into her father's study. Medical journals filled bookshelves alongside texts on folklore, ancient rituals, and occult symbolism, an odd combination for the small-town doctor she remembered. His oak desk dominated the room, its surface meticulously organized with pens aligned precisely, as if he might return at any moment. While examining the desk, Eleanor's elbow bumped a row of books, revealing a small lever behind them. When pulled, a narrow panel in the wall silently slid open. "Dad's hiding place," she whispered, remembering childhood warnings never to enter his study. "What were you hiding?" The concealed compartment contained a leather-bound journal with her mother's distinctive handwriting. Eleanor's hands trembled as she opened it, discovering entries dating back 30 years. The early pages detailed normal life, marriage to Eleanor's father, his medical practice, first pregnancy with Emily. But entries grew increasingly erratic after Eleanor's birth, references to keeping it contained appearing with disturbing frequency. October 17, 1995. The noises are worse tonight. Robert insists the seal is holding, but I heard it scratching again. The girls can hear it too. Eleanor especially seems drawn to it. Found her trying to open the basement door again. We must be more vigilant. December 4, 1995. Robert spends every night in the basement now, says his research is progressing, that we'll be free soon. But the look in his eyes, I fear what he's becoming. The bargain our ancestors made was never meant to be broken. Some prices once paid cannot be refunded. The final entry, dated just weeks before Eleanor fled at 18, chilled her blood. March 12, 2003. Eleanor shows the signs now. The connection is undeniable. Robert says she's the key. Her blood carries the strongest link to it. I cannot allow what he's planning. Better the evil stays contained than what he intends to unleash. God forgive me for what I must do. Tucked between the final pages, Eleanor found a small rusted key wrapped in a cloth, stained with what appeared to be dried blood. The cloth bore symbols matching those in her father's occult books. Eleanor's contemplation was interrupted by a knock at the front door. Outside stood a middle-aged man with weathered features, his expression shifting from neighborly to shocked upon seeing her. "You're back," he said, not a question but an accusation. "Hayes' girl, right, the younger one." "Eleanor," she confirmed warily. "Walter Green. Lived down the road." His eyes kept darting to her pregnant belly. "Folks figured the house would stay empty after what?" Eleanor asked. Walter shifted uncomfortably. "Not my place to say, just checking to see who moved in." His gaze lingered on the threshold he carefully avoided crossing. "You should know, though, some houses are better left abandoned." As he turned to leave, Eleanor called after him. "What happened to my parents? Walter paused. Official story is your daddy had a breakdown. Killed your mama. Then himself. He glanced back, eyes now fixed on her stomach. But folks around here, we know better. We know what that house sits on. What's beneath it? His voice lowered. You being back, and in your condition, it's starting again. Before Eleanor could question him further, Walter hurried away, making what looked suspiciously like a protective gesture across his chest. Back inside, Eleanor stood in the hallway, maternal instincts warring with curiosity. The baby kicked violently whenever she approached the basement door, almost a warning. Yet something beckoned from below, a pull she couldn't explain. That night, Eleanor woke again at 3:17 a.m., the grandfather clock suddenly chiming despite its frozen hands. The scratching from the basement had grown more insistent, rhythmic, almost like a form of communication. Half asleep, Eleanor found herself standing before the basement door, her mother's key in hand. The scratching stopped abruptly, replaced by silence so complete it hummed. A whisper floated through the keyhole, her name in what sounded disturbingly like her father's voice. Eleanor, come home, bring it home. The baby kicked so hard, Eleanor gasped, in pain breaking whatever spell had drawn her to the door. Backing away, she clutched her mother's diary to her chest, suddenly certain of one thing. Whatever secrets lay beneath this house, they were inextricably tied to the child she carried. Morning light did little to dispel the night's unsettling events. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, her mother's diary and the blood-stained key before her, like artifacts from some forgotten ritual. Sleep deprivation and pregnancy had left dark circles beneath her eyes, yet adrenaline kept her alert, vigilant. The basement door called to her, a magnetic pull she could neither explain nor entirely resist. 20 years of childhood warnings echoed in her memory. Never open the basement door. Never go down there alone. Never disturb what sleeps below. Eleanor dialed her sister's number, something she hadn't done in years. After their parents' deaths, Emily had cut all ties, not even attending their funerals. The call went to voicemail 3 times before Emily finally answered on the 4th attempt. Eleanor, her sister's voice was flat, guarded. Why are you calling? I'm at the house, Eleanor said simply. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken history. Then, get out. Now. Emily's voice trembled. You shouldn't be there, especially not in your condition. How did you know I'm pregnant? Another pause. Just leave, Ellie. It's not safe. What happened to Mom and Dad? Eleanor pressed. The neighbor said, Don't talk to the neighbors. Emily interrupted sharply. Don't trust anyone in that town. They're all part of it. Part of what? I found Mom's diary. She wrote about keeping something contained, about Dad spending nights in the basement, about me being connected somehow. Stop, Emily's voice cracked with fear. Don't say another word. And whatever you do, don't open the basement door. When Eleanor mentioned the key wrapped in blood-stained cloth, the line went dead. 3 subsequent calls went unanswered. Standing before the basement door, Eleanor examined the heavy padlock securing it, newer than the house's other fixtures. Above the door frame, nearly invisible unless specifically seeking it, was a row of symbols etched into the wood, similar to those on the cloth around the key. Eleanor pressed her palm against the door. The wood felt unnaturally warm, almost pulsing beneath her touch. The baby kicked violently, causing her to step back. What are you so afraid of? She whispered to her unborn child. That night, Eleanor dreamed of descending the basement stairs, guided by candlelight. In the dream, she was a child again, perhaps 7 or 8. Her father led her by the hand, his face obscured by shadows despite the candle he carried. You're special, Alan, dream father whispered. You can hear it calling, can't you? The others can't, but you can. At the bottom of the stairs stretched a room much larger than the house's foundation should allow. In its center stood a stone altar, ancient and worn smooth by generations of use. The walls bore the same symbols found on the cloth, and above the door, Our family has always been the keepers, her father explained in the dream. It chose us centuries ago. But it wants you in a different way. Dream Eleanor approached the altar, drawn by an irresistible force. From beneath it, something whispered her name. Not with her father's voice, but with a sound like dry leaves, scraping stone. She woke with a gasp, sheets soaked with sweat, the baby kicking frantically. The clock read 3:17 a.m. From below came the familiar scratching, more urgent than before. Eleanor found herself at the basement door without conscious decision to go there. The key fit perfectly in the padlock, which opened with a satisfying click. Something inside her, something beyond conscious thought, knew this moment was inevitable, perhaps, had been since conception. As the padlock fell away, the scratching stopped. Silence descended, expectant and absolute. Eleanor hesitated, one hand on her belly, the other on the doorknob. Childhood warnings warred with an almost primal need to know the truth about her parents, about herself, about the life growing within her. "Whatever you are," she whispered to the door, "I'm not afraid." A lie, but a necessary one. When she turned the knob, it moved smoothly, as if recently oiled. The door swung open with no dramatic creak, revealing a darkness so complete it seemed to absorb the hallway light rather than be illuminated by it. The first step on the basement stairs felt like crossing a threshold, not just of space, but of time, as if she'd stepped from the present into some ancient, forgotten realm where modern rules no longer applied. The stairway stretched downward, farther than seemed physically possible for the house's dimensions. At the bottom, barely visible in the darkness, lay a faint glow, not the warm yellow of electric light, but a cold blue luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air smelled of earth, copper, and something indefinably ancient. Eleanor took another step down, then another. The door swung shut behind her with decisive finality, leaving her in darkness broken only by that distant rhythmic glow. The baby went suddenly, unnaturally still within her womb. The key in her hand grew hot, nearly burning her palm. When she looked down, the metal was glowing with the same cold blue light that beckoned from below. Eleanor never reached the bottom of those stairs. 3 steps down, a wave of nausea and dizziness overwhelmed her. The baby thrashed violently within her womb, as if fighting some invisible force. When she doubled over in pain, the basement door suddenly slammed shut behind her, leaving her trapped in suffocating darkness. Panic rising, Eleanor scrambled back up the stairs, fumbling for the door handle. It refused to budge. Just as her breathing became labored, the handle turned on its own, the door swinging open to release her into the hallway where she collapsed, gasping for air. By morning, Eleanor had convinced herself a sensible investigation was needed before any further basement explorations. The town library might hold records about the house and its history, facts to counterbalance the growing dread that threatened to consume her. The Willow Creek Public Library occupied a Victorian building nearly as old as Eleanor's childhood home. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of morning light, filtering through stained glass windows. The quiet was absolute, broken only by the gentle ticking of an antique clock. Behind the circulation desk sat an elderly woman with silver hair pulled into a severe bun. She peered over wire-rimmed glasses as Eleanor approached. "Can I help you?" The librarian's eyes narrowed slightly. "You look familiar. I'm Eleanor Hayes. I grew up here but left years ago." Recognition dawned in the woman's expression, followed immediately by something resembling alarm. Dr. Hayes's younger daughter. "Yes, I remember now." Her tone cooled noticeably. "What brings you back to our library?" "I'm researching the history of my family's house on Willow Lane." The librarian's fingers stopped their rhythmic tapping on the desk. "That's town history, not just house history." She hesitated before adding, "The local history section is in the back room. I'll need to accompany you. Those materials don't circulate." The back room smelled of aged paper and preservation chemicals. Glass-fronted cabinets contained leather-bound volumes alongside acid-free boxes of fragile documents. The librarian unlocked a cabinet with reluctance. Town records dating back to founding in 1824, she explained curtly. Property deeds, council minutes, notable events. As Eleanor began examining the materials, the librarian hovered nearby, her presence more sentinel than assistant. The town's founding documents revealed that Willow Creek had been established by 7 families, the Hayes ancestor Jeremiah Hayes among them. Their signatures appeared on the town charter, alongside a strange symbol Eleanor recognized from her mother's diary. Property records showed her family's land had been continuously occupied by Hayes descendants since initial settlement. More intriguing was a surveyor's note from 1823. Land deemed unsuitable for habitation due to unusual geological formation beneath. Native tribes avoid area, citing ancient evil. J. Hayes insists on building despite warnings. Eleanor glanced up to find the librarian watching her intently. What was the unusual geological formation? Some sort of natural cave system, the woman replied too quickly. Nothing important. Further searching yielded a faded map showing that Eleanor's house stood at the center of a perfect circle, formed by the original 7 founding homes. A notation at the edge of the map labeled the arrangement as the containment pattern. Most revealing was a brittle newspaper from 1902, describing a tragedy at the Hayes residence, where 3 children had disappeared, last seen playing near the basement entrance. The article mentioned unusual disturbances preceding their disappearance and quoted Thaddeus Hayes, Eleanor's great-grandfather. The price has been paid. The covenant remains unbroken. I think I've seen enough, the librarian announced abruptly, moving to reclaim the materials. As Eleanor reluctantly prepared to leave, a yellowed photograph slipped from between book pages. A town gathering circa. In the background stood her childhood home, and before it a circle of townspeople surrounding what appeared to be a stone altar, the very same from her dream, temporarily moved from the basement to the yard. That doesn't belong to you, the librarian snapped, snatching the photo. Outside the library, Eleanor paused on the steps, processing what she'd learned. The town's unusual founding, the 7 families, the containment pattern, the covenant pieces, of a puzzle still maddeningly incomplete. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the man watching from across the street until he approached. Middle-aged, with kind eyes that contrasted with his solemn expression. "You're Robert Hayes' daughter," he said, not a question. Eleanor nodded warily. "I'm Daniel Sullivan. Your father was my mentor before." He trailed off. "I saw you in the library. You're looking for answers about the house. Do you have any?" Daniel glanced nervously at passing townspeople. "Not here. They're watching." He pressed a small book into her hands. "Your father's private research journal. He gave it to me for safekeeping before that night. Said if either of his daughters ever returned, I should make sure they got it." He stepped back. "Be careful who you trust in this town, Eleanor. Most folks here serve the covenant, not the truth." As he walked away, Eleanor felt a sharp kick from her baby, followed by a sensation like ice water flooding her veins. A warning, perhaps, or a recognition. When she looked down at her father's journal, the cover seemed to pulse briefly with that same blue glow from the basement depths. Eleanor waited until nightfall before examining her father's journal, irrationally certain that daylight would somehow diminish its revelations. The leather-bound book sat on the kitchen table before her, its presence altering the air in the room like a gathering storm. When she finally opened it, the pages released a scent of antiseptic and something metallic, blood, perhaps. Her father's precise handwriting filled each page with observations, diagrams, and increasingly disturbing speculation. The early entries described conventional medical research, but soon veered into darker territory, explorations of ancient folklore regarding entities that existed between worlds and their interactions with human bloodlines. Her father had meticulously documented generations of Hayes family history, highlighting patterns of unusual births, mysterious deaths, and peculiar abilities, Most troubling were his notes about Eleanor herself. Eleanor demonstrates unprecedented sensitivity to the entity's presence. At age 3, found her speaking to the voice under the floor. Unlike previous Hayes children who merely sensed it, she appears to communicate with it directly. Blood samples show unusual markers, genetic mutation unlike anything in medical literature. The connection is stronger than any Hayes before her. A separate section labeled Containment Protocol detailed rituals performed by the 7 founding families to keep the entity imprisoned beneath the town. The Hayes family served as primary keepers due to their blood connection, maintaining the strongest seal in their basement. Each generation must provide a sacrifice to maintain the covenant, her father had written. Not death, but dedication. A Hayes must always remain as keeper, but the entity grows stronger, and conventional methods are failing. It wants Eleanor specifically. I believe her unique blood chemistry could lead to a permanent solution. The final pages revealed her father's ultimate plan. Marion doesn't understand. She thinks maintaining the old ways is enough. But I've found references to an ancient ritual that could permanently bind the entity, not just contain it, but harness its power. Eleanor is the key. When she reaches maturity, her blood combined with the correct ritual elements could transform the entity into a source of unlimited power and knowledge. The risks are significant, but the potential benefits to humanity are incalculable. Eleanor closed the journal, hands trembling. Her father hadn't been trying to protect the town from some ancient evil. He'd been planning to use her in a dangerous ritual to control it. A sudden noise from upstairs broke her concentration, a soft thud, followed by the creak of floorboards. Eleanor froze, listening intently. Another creak, definitely footsteps. Someone was in the house. Grabbing a kitchen knife, she moved cautiously toward the stairs. The noises had stopped, but she could sense a presence, watching, waiting, heart pounding. She climbed the stairs, knife clutched before her. Her old bedroom door stood ajar. Eleanor was certain she'd left it closed. Inside, nothing appeared disturbed at first glance, until she noticed the closet door slightly open. Taking a deep breath, she yanked it wide. Relief washed through her, followed immediately by renewed terror, as arms encircled her from behind. "Don't scream," a female voice whispered. "It's me." Eleanor twisted to face her captor. "Emily?" Her sister looked haggard, eyes haunted by some nameless dread. "I told you to leave," Emily hissed, releasing her. "Why couldn't you just listen? What are you doing here? How did you get in?" "I still have a key," Emily said, glancing nervously around the room. "I've been watching the house since yesterday. Saw you go to the library, meet Daniel." Her expression hardened. "Did he give you Dad's journal?" Eleanor nodded. "Did you read it? About what Dad was planning for you?" "He wanted to use me in some ritual, something about my blood." Emily laughed bitterly. "That's putting it mildly. He was going to sacrifice you to that thing in the basement. Not kill you exactly, but bind you to it permanently." She shuddered. "I overheard him telling Mom the night before everything happened. That's when she finally understood how far gone he was." "What actually happened that night, Em?" "The neighbor said Dad killed Mom, then himself." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Mom tried to get Dad committed. Said his obsession had become dangerous. They fought. I heard them from my bedroom. Then Dad went down to the basement, and something changed in him. When he came back up, he wasn't himself anymore. His eyes," she faltered. "Mom tried to protect you. She sent me to get help, but by the time I returned with neighbors, it was too late. And Dad, they found him in the basement by the altar. He'd carved symbols into his own flesh before slitting his throat. The official report called it a murder-suicide during a psychotic break, but the town elders knew better. They sealed the basement afterward, strengthened the containment spells." Eleanor processed this information, connecting it with what she'd learned. "But what does any of this have to do with my baby?" Emily's gaze dropped to Eleanor's swollen belly, her expression a mixture of pity and fear. "When did you conceive, Ellie?" Think carefully. Eleanor calculated backward. Late January, why? The night of the lunar eclipse. Emily closed her eyes briefly. The same night the containment seals weakened. The same night something escaped. Not fully, but enough to influence the world above. What are you saying? That thing has been trapped for centuries, unable to leave the confines of its prison, but it found another way out. Emily placed her hand gently on Eleanor's belly. Your child isn't entirely human, Ellie. It's part of the entity, a vessel created to help it break free completely. The baby kicked violently at Emily's touch, as if in confirmation. Eleanor staggered backward, nausea rising as pieces fell terribly into place. Her inexplicable draw to return to this house. The baby's reactions to the basement. The unnatural blue glow from below. From her purse, Emily withdrew a weathered leather pouch. I found this in Dad's medical bag after that night. Inside lay strange instruments, ceremonial scalpels, vials for blood collection, a silver cup inscribed with familiar symbols. What is all this? Eleanor whispered. The tools he would have used on you, Emily replied grimly. And now, possibly our only hope of stopping what's growing inside you. Eleanor recoiled from her sister's words, protective hands cradling her belly. No, she whispered, and that's impossible. Is it? Emily challenged. The unexplained connection to this house? Your baby's reactions to the basement? The conception during an eclipse? She softened, seeing Eleanor's distress. I've spent years researching what happened to our family, Ellie. There's a reason I never came back until now. So you're saying my baby is, what, possessed? Part demon? Eleanor's voice broke. That's insane, Em. Not demon. Something older. Something that was here before humans. Emily glanced nervously at the floor. It's been trapped beneath this house for centuries, contained by our bloodline. But it's always searching for escape. Eleanor sank onto the bed, mind racing. Michael's sudden death in his sleep, with no medical explanation. Her inexplicable compulsion to return to this house of all places. The dreams, the voices, the strange connections. They formed a horrifying pattern she could no longer deny. We need to see what's down there, she finally said. In the basement. All of it, Emily paled. That's exactly what it wants. To lure you down. I need to know, Em, for myself. For my baby. Our baby, Emily corrected gently. Whatever happens, I'm with you now. They prepared methodically. Flashlights, chalk for protective symbols, Emily had learned, and their father's medical bag with its ceremonial tools. At the basement door, Emily used the chalk to mark the doorframe with sigils. Protection, she explained, and a way back if we get lost. The rusted key turned in the lock with an ominous click. This time, when Eleanor descended the stairs, Emily followed close behind. The stairway stretched downward, far deeper than the house's foundation should allow, spiraling into darkness that their flashlight beams barely penetrated. The architecture is wrong, Emily whispered. Space doesn't work normally here. At the bottom, instead of a typical basement, they found a rough-hewn stone corridor extending in two directions. The walls bore ancient symbols, some matching those in their father's journal. The air felt thick, charged with something that made the hairs on their arms stand up. Which way? Eleanor asked. As if in answer, a faint blue glow pulsed from the right passage. The baby shifted, a gentle pressure, unlike its usual frantic movements when near the basement. It's calmer down here, Eleanor noted with surprise. It feels at home, Emily replied grimly. They followed the right corridor, which opened into a circular chamber, roughly 20 feet in diameter. At its center stood the stone altar from Eleanor's dream, ancient and worn smooth, covered in faint stains that could only be blood. The walls were carved with elaborate symbols in concentric circles, all focusing inward toward the altar. The binding site, Emily whispered. Where our ancestors first trapped it, Eleanor approached the altar, drawn by an inexplicable pull. Carved into its surface was a perfect indentation in the shape of a human body, sized for someone Eleanor's height. Dad brought me here, she said suddenly, memory surfacing. When I was 7. He laid me in that indentation and chanted something. Said he was testing my affinity. Emily nodded sadly. He was preparing you even then. A sudden scraping sound from behind the altar drew their attention. Eleanor circled it cautiously, finding what appeared to be a stone trapdoor in the floor, marked with 7 interlocking symbols, the founding family's crests. "What's down there?" she asked. "The entity itself, or what passes for its physical form?" Emily's voice quavered. "The altar and chamber are just the binding site. That," she pointed to the trapdoor, "is the actual prison." As if responding to their attention, a thin blue light began seeping from the edges of the trapdoor. The temperature dropped precipitously, their breath fogging in the sudden cold. The baby moved again, a slow, deliberate roll that felt nothing like its usual movements. Eleanor felt a presence probing at the edges of her mind, not invasive but curious, questioning. Images flashed unbidden, stars seen from impossible angles, landscapes that couldn't exist on Earth. Knowledge that seemed to flow directly into her consciousness without passing through her senses. "It's trying to communicate," she gasped. Emily grabbed her arm. "Don't listen. It manipulates, twists thoughts." But the presence felt different than Eleanor expected. Not malevolent so much as alien, operating on principles beyond human morality. She sensed loneliness, ancient beyond comprehension, and a desperate yearning for freedom. The stone altar began to glow with the same blue luminescence. Symbols Eleanor couldn't read appeared on its surface, shifting and changing. The baby moved in perfect synchronization with the pulsing light, as if conducting some silent dialogue. "We need to leave," Emily urged, pulling Eleanor's arm. "Now!" As they turned to go, the ground shuddered beneath them. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling. The trapdoor rattled in its frame as if something beneath were pushing upward with tremendous force. A crack appeared in the chamber's floor, extending from the trapdoor toward them. From within it poured the blue light, brighter now, nearly blinding. The crack widened, revealing swirling darkness beneath, punctuated by points of light like distant stars. "Run!" Emily screamed, dragging Eleanor toward the corridor. They fled back through the stone passage as the rumbling intensified. Reaching the stairway, Eleanor glanced back to see the blue light pursuing them. Flowing like liquid along the floor, Emily scrambled up the stairs first, Eleanor following, her pregnant body slowing her ascent. The light surged forward, wrapping around Eleanor's ankle with impossible solidity. She cried out as it burned cold against her skin. Emily grabbed her hands, pulling desperately. "Don't look back at it." But Eleanor couldn't help herself. She turned to see the light forming a vaguely humanoid shape, its featureless face tilted as if in examination. From it came a voice that bypassed her ears, speaking directly into her mind. "Child of my blood, bearer of my return. The covenant breaks. The time approaches." With a final heave, Emily pulled Eleanor free. They tumbled through the basement doorway into the hallway above, slamming the door shut behind them. The blue light seeped briefly through the cracks before fading, leaving only the ordinary darkness of a regular basement door. The sisters collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. Eleanor's ankle bore a perfect ring of frost-burned skin where the light had grasped her. "Now do you believe me?" Emily asked. Eleanor nodded, hands protectively covering her belly where the baby had gone completely, unnaturally still. By morning, Eleanor's ankle had worsened, the frost burn darkening to an unnatural blue-black, with intricate patterns spreading outward like frost on a window. Worse, the baby hadn't moved since their basement encounter, though a hand pressed to her belly could feel a faint, too rapid heartbeat. "We need a doctor," Emily insisted. Eyeing the spreading marks with growing alarm, Eleanor shook her head. "No hospital. They'll have questions we can't answer. Then we go to Dr. Winters. She was Dad's colleague, knows some of the town's history. She might help without involving authorities." The small medical practice at the edge of town looked ordinary enough, a converted Victorian with a discreet brass plaque reading Dr. Sarah Winters. "Family medicine." Inside, the waiting room sat empty, the receptionist eyeing the Hayes sisters with undisguised suspicion. "Dr. Winters isn't taking new patients," she said flatly when Eleanor explained her pregnancy concerns. Emily leaned forward. "Tell her it's Robert Hayes's daughters. Tell her it's about the covenant." The woman's expression shifted from suspicion to alarm. She disappeared into a back office, returning moments later. "Follow me," she instructed curtly. Dr. Winters was older than Eleanor remembered, silver-haired now, face lined with years of keeping others' secrets. Recognition flickered in her eyes as the sisters entered her office. "I wondered if either of you would ever return," she said, gesturing for Eleanor to sit on the examination table. "When I heard someone was staying at the Hayes house again," she trailed off, attention fixing on Eleanor's swollen belly. "How far along?" 32 weeks, Eleanor answered. Dr. Winters frowned. "You appear further, may I?" At Eleanor's nod, she measured the fundal height with practiced movements. "Measuring closer to 40 weeks, she murmured. "Accelerated development." When Eleanor removed her sock to show the spreading frostburn, Dr. Winters inhaled sharply. "You went below," she stated, not a question. "We had to know," Emily said defensively, "and now you do." Dr. Winters sighed. "Let me see what we're dealing with." The ultrasound equipment looked standard, but Eleanor noticed unusual symbols discreetly etched into its housing. As the cold gel spread across her belly, Dr. Winters watched the monitor with intense focus, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "This isn't right," she whispered. The image showed a perfectly formed baby, but surrounding it was a faint aura of light the machine shouldn't have been able to detect, pulsing with the same blue luminescence they'd seen in the basement. "The equipment's been modified to detect certain energies," Dr. Winters explained, seeing their confusion. "Your father helped design it, actually." She pointed to anomalies on the screen, the baby's brain activity patterns, the unusual formation around the heart, the advanced development of all systems. "This pregnancy is progressing at roughly twice normal speed. And these readings..." She shook her head in disbelief. "What does it mean?" Eleanor asked, though she already feared the answer. "It means your child is developing into something beyond conventional understanding." Dr. Winters' clinical detachment faltered. "I've never seen readings like these, even in the other Covenant families." "Other families? There have been others like this?" Emily demanded. "Over generations, yes. The founding families occasionally produced children with affinities, but nothing like this." She printed several ultrasound images, handing them to Eleanor. "Your child appears to be a true hybrid. Human, yes, but also something else entirely." The image showed the baby's face turned directly toward the ultrasound probe, eyes open when they should be closed, an expression of awareness impossible for a fetus. Most disturbing was the distinct impression that it was smiling. As Eleanor dressed, a nurse entered with lab results. She froze upon seeing Eleanor, recognition and fear crossing her features. "You shouldn't be here," the nurse whispered urgently when Dr. Winters stepped out momentarily. "Not in your condition. You're carrying the awakening." "The what?" Eleanor asked. "Every few generations, the entity attempts to create a vessel. The town stops it, preserves the covenant." Her eyes darted nervously to the door. "But you're different. Your bloodline is strongest, and you..." She hesitated. "Blood calls to blood. Why do you think your husband died when he did? It needed him gone, needed you alone, vulnerable, returning to your roots. How do you know about Michael?" Eleanor demanded. The nurse's expression softened with genuine pity. "Everyone in town knows. We've been watching, waiting." She pressed a small object into Eleanor's palm, a pendant bearing protective symbols. "Wear this. It won't stop what's coming, but it might slow the progression." When Dr. Winters returned, the nurse's demeanor changed instantly to professional detachment, though her eyes conveyed a final warning before she left. "Your condition is precarious," Dr. Winters stated, reviewing the lab work. "Protein markers I've never seen. Hormone levels off the charts. The pregnancy is draining you while accelerating itself." She wrote several prescriptions. "These will help with symptoms, but what?" "But they won't change the outcome." Dr. Winters removed her glasses. "I knew your father well, Eleanor. He believed the entity could be controlled, harnessed. Others in town, myself included, have always believed it must remain contained." She lowered her voice. "There are those who will see your child as the fulfillment of the covenant, a perfect melding that might bridge worlds. Others will see it as the ultimate threat, the breaking of ancient bounds. And what do you see it as?" Eleanor asked. Dr. Winter's gaze shifted to the ultrasound image, the two aware eyes, the unnerving smile. "I see a child born of impossible circumstances, neither fully human nor fully other. A child who will change everything." She looked directly at Eleanor. "The question is whether that change brings enlightenment or annihilation." As they left the clinic, Eleanor clutched the ultrasound images, unable to look away from her child's knowing expression. The baby moved again for the first time since the basement, not kicking, but turning slowly, deliberately, as if awakening to new awareness of itself and its purpose. "What do we do now?" she whispered to Emily. "We learn more," her sister answered grimly. "Before the whole town realizes what's growing inside you." The sisters returned to the Hayes house in silence, each lost in her own thoughts. Eleanor clutched the ultrasound images, unable to reconcile the unnaturally aware child depicted there with the innocent baby she'd imagined carrying. Emily drove with white-knuckled tension, constantly checking the rearview mirror. "We're being followed," she announced as they turned onto Willow Lane. A black SUV had maintained a discreet distance since the medical clinic. "Town council, most likely. They'll have heard about your visit to Dr. Winters." Inside the house, Emily systematically checked windows and doors, drawing curtains and reinforcing Dr. Winters' protective symbols with her own. Eleanor watched her sister's practiced movements with growing unease. "You know more than you're telling me," she finally said. Emily paused, resignation crossing her features. "After I left home, I spent years researching what happened to our family. I found others, descendants of the founding families who'd broken away from the covenant. We formed a kind of support group, people trying to understand their connection to the entity without being controlled by the town. And what did you learn? That everything has a pattern. The entity attempts emergence every few generations. Usually the town stops it, containing it through ritual sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" Eleanor's hand instinctively covered her belly. "Not death, usually. More like dedication. A chosen keeper who serves as prison warden, maintaining the seals. But your case is unprecedented. The entity has never successfully created a hybrid before." Eleanor sank into a chair. "So what happens now?" "The town will divide into factions. Traditionalists who want to remove the baby and strengthen the containment. Progressives who believe your child represents an evolution of the covenant. And extremists who will see this as the apocalypse or salvation, depending on their perspective." Emily's expression hardened. "None of them care about you or the baby as individuals, only what you represent." Eleanor felt the baby shift again, that new, deliberate movement that felt more like communication than normal fetal activity. "And what do you think?" Emily knelt before her sister, taking her hands. "I think you deserve a choice, something our family never gave us. And I think that child, regardless of what else it may be, is still my niece or nephew." A knock at the front door interrupted them. Through the peephole, they saw Daniel Sullivan on the porch, nervously glancing over his shoulder. "We can trust him," Eleanor decided. Remembering the journal he'd safeguarded, Daniel entered quickly, declining to step beyond the foyer. Town council called an emergency meeting. Dr. Winters was summoned. "They know about your condition, Eleanor. How much time do we have?" Emily asked. "A day, maybe less. The traditionalists are gathering support for intervention." He handed Eleanor a small velvet pouch. "Protective herbs. Burn them at dusk and dawn." His eyes lingered on Eleanor's belly. "Is it true? About the child?" Eleanor nodded wordlessly. "Then God help us all," he whispered, making a sign against evil. "Some believe this fulfills the oldest prophecy. When the stars align and blood mingles with the ancient, The veil between worlds will thin. After Daniel left, Emily disappeared upstairs. Returning with an ancient trunk Eleanor recognized from their childhood attic, their mother's keepsakes. Inside lay family mementos spanning generations, photographs, letters, pressed flowers, and at the bottom, a child's doll that Eleanor remembered as her own. "I found this hidden in Mom's things after she died," Emily explained, handing Eleanor the worn cloth doll. "Look inside the stuffing." Eleanor felt a hard object within the doll's chest. Carefully opening a hidden seam, she extracted a folded paper and a small key, unlike any she'd seen before. Made not of metal, but what appeared to be polished bone. The note, written in their mother's hand. "Read it for Eleanor when the time comes. The final door requires blood and bone." "Final door?" Eleanor questioned. "There's more beneath the house than what we saw," Emily explained. "That chamber was just the binding site. The actual prison lies deeper, behind a door only Hayes' blood can open. Mom suspected Dad was planning to use you to access it. For what purpose? According to his notes, he believed the deepest chamber contains the entity's true form, and with it, knowledge and power beyond human understanding. He thought he could control it using your blood connection, harness it somehow." Eleanor examined the bone key, its surface etched with microscopic symbols that seemed to shift when not directly observed. "And Mom, what did she believe?" "That some doors should remain closed no matter what lies beyond them." Emily's gaze turned distant. "She tried to protect you the only way she knew how." As night fell, Eleanor felt increasingly restless, the baby's movements growing more pronounced, almost purposeful. The frost-burn patterns on her ankle had spread further, tracing delicate blue lines up her calf like glowing veins. From her bedroom window, she noticed several vehicles parked discreetly along Willow Lane, watchers from town, maintaining silent vigil. The pendant the nurse had given her grew warm against her skin whenever she looked at them, as if responding to perceived threat. That night, Eleanor woke to find Emily sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by candles, chanting softly in a language Eleanor didn't recognize. When the chanting stopped, Emily looked up, her eyes momentarily reflecting candlelight with an unnatural blue sheen. "What are you doing?" Eleanor whispered. "Protective ritual. To buy us time." Emily's voice sounded strained, distant. "I learned it from the others, like us, others with connections to the entity." Emily nodded, extinguishing the candles one by one. "We call ourselves the Awakened, neither fully aligned with the Covenant nor against it, seeking understanding rather than control or fear." As she spoke, Eleanor noticed something clutched in Emily's hand, a small ceremonial knife with familiar symbols etched into its blade. "The offering must be made willingly," Emily said, following her gaze. "Blood of the bloodline freely given to maintain balance until the child comes." Understanding dawned as Eleanor watched Emily press the knife to her own palm, drawing a thin line of blood that she smeared in precise patterns around the room's threshold. "You've been doing this all along," Eleanor realized. "Since I came back to the house, you've been making blood offerings to protect me." "To protect both of you," Emily corrected, her expression unreadable in the darkness. "The covenant must be maintained, but not as the town elders understand it. There's another way, a third path." She approached Eleanor's bed, sitting beside her sister. "The baby isn't just the entity reborn, Ellie. It's something new, a bridge between worlds that could end centuries of conflict. That's what Dad glimpsed but couldn't fully comprehend. That's what Mom feared but couldn't prevent." Emily took Eleanor's hand, their fingers intertwining. "The question is, what will you choose to do with the power growing inside you? Continue the cycle of containment and fear, or forge something new?" Outside, the watchers maintained their vigil as midnight approached. Within Eleanor's womb, the hybrid child turned once more, its developing mind touching its mother's with alien yet unmistakable sentiment. Anticipation. Dawn arrived with a heavy fog shrouding the Hayes house, obscuring the watchers' vehicles, but not their presence. Eleanor could sense them like a weight pressing against the windows, the town's growing attention, their fear and anticipation mirroring her own. The spreading blue veins had reached her knee overnight, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. More concerning, her pregnancy had visibly advanced, her belly now resembling full term, despite being weeks short. The baby moved with deliberate, almost thoughtful motions. Nothing like normal fetal movement. We need to understand what we're facing, Emily said, spreading their accumulated artifacts across the kitchen table. Their father's journal, mother's diary, the bone key, the ultrasound images, Daniel's protective herbs. There's a pattern here we're missing. Eleanor gingerly touched the frost-burn patterns on her leg. This is spreading faster. And I'm having dreams, not my dreams, its dreams. Stars, strange geometries, voices speaking in languages that shouldn't make sense but somehow do. Emily's expression grew troubled. It's establishing a stronger connection. The pregnancy is accelerating its development, both physical and mental. She hesitated before adding, "At this rate you could deliver within days, not weeks." A knock at the door startled them both. Through the window, they spotted Dr. Winters on the porch, alone but clearly agitated. "The council sent me," she explained once inside, glancing nervously at the watching vehicles. "They're divided on how to proceed, but agreed I should examine you first. Some believe intervention is necessary immediately." "What kind of intervention?" Eleanor asked warily. Dr. Winters wouldn't meet her eyes. "The traditionalists advocate for emergency delivery, followed by containment rituals for the child. They want to take my baby." Eleanor translated flatly. "They believe your child represents an unprecedented threat to the covenant. The old texts warn of this possibility. The vessel that walks between worlds." Dr. Winters removed an ancient leather-bound book from her bag, placing it reverently on the table. "This is the original grimoire of the Seven Families. It contains the founding covenant and all subsequent amendments. I've been its keeper for 30 years. The book's cover bore 7 interlocked symbols, the founding family's crests arranged around a central sigil that matched the one above the basement door. When opened, its pages revealed handwritten entries spanning centuries, each generation adding to its contents. "The covenant began as a protection pact," Dr. Winters explained, turning to the earliest pages. "The entity, what some called the Ancient One, was discovered beneath this land by the first settlers. Indigenous tribes had long avoided the area, considering it cursed." She pointed to a detailed illustration of the stone altar they'd seen in the basement. "The founding families learned to contain it through blood sacrifice and ritual. Eventually, they discovered the Hayes bloodline had a unique affinity for communicating with it, a genetic quirk that made them ideal keepers." Emily leaned forward. "But what exactly is this entity? A demon? Alien? God?" The grimoire offers several theories. Most compelling is that it's a being from another dimension, one that intersects with ours at certain weak points, this house being built on one such nexus. It perceives reality fundamentally differently than we do, exists according to different physical laws. Dr. Winters turned to later entries. "Over generations, the entity attempted various methods of escape or influence. Occasionally, it would possess a Hayes family member. Your great-grandfather, Thaddeus, documented this in detail. But full physical manifestation remained impossible due to the dimensional barriers. Until now," Eleanor whispered, hands protective over her belly. "Yes." Dr. Winters looked grim. "Your child represents something unprecedented, not possession, but genuine hybridization. A being with human form, but the entity's essence." Eleanor felt sick. "So the entity, what, influenced my husband's death? My pregnancy?" The grimoire contains prophecies about the perfect vessel, conceived during celestial alignment, born of the strongest bloodline. "Your father was obsessed with these passages." Dr. Winters hesitated. "He believed such a hybrid could be controlled, used to access the entity's knowledge without releasing it fully." "And what do you believe?" Emily demanded. "I believe the child exists in a state we cannot fully comprehend, neither fully human nor fully other. What that means for its nature, its intentions, She shook her head. That remains unknown. Eleanor suddenly doubled over, gasping as a contraction rippled through her abdomen, intense, prolonged, and accompanied by a flash of blue light visible beneath her skin. The labor's beginning, Dr. Winters stated, moving quickly to Eleanor's side. Far faster than normal progression. What do we do? Emily asked, panic edging her voice. We have hours at most before delivery, Dr. Winters said grimly. The council will act once they realize. You have 3 options. Surrender to their intervention, flee town immediately, or... She paused, eyes moving to the basement door. Or what? Eleanor managed between pained breaths. Complete what your father started. Use the bone key. Access the deepest chamber. Confront the entity directly. Dr. Winters' expression was grave. Learn its true intentions for your child before deciding its fate. The baby shifted powerfully, another contraction following immediately. Eleanor cried out, clutching the edge of the table, as blue light pulsed visibly across her entire abdomen. It's responding to proximity to its source, Dr. Winters observed. The entity below senses its offspring's imminent arrival. From outside came the sound of car doors closing, voices conferring in urgent tones. The watchers were mobilizing. They're coming, Emily said, moving to the window. The council must have sensed the labor beginning. Eleanor struggled to her feet, one hand on her belly, the other clutching the bone key from the doll. The decision crystallized with sudden clarity. Neither running nor surrendering would provide answers. Only confrontation would reveal the truth about what grew within. Help me to the basement, she gasped to Emily. I need to know what this is. What? My baby truly is, before they take it from me, Dr. Winters' expression reflected both fear and respect. I'll delay them as long as possible. But hurry, some traditions exist for good reason, and some doors remain sealed for the protection of all. As Emily supported Eleanor toward the basement door, the blue lines on her leg flared brilliantly, spreading upward at accelerated speed, reaching toward her heart. From below came a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the floorboards, the entity's anticipation matching that of its unborn offspring. The bone key grew warm in Eleanor's palm, seeming to pulse with its own heartbeat as they approached the final threshold between worlds. The basement stairs seemed to stretch deeper with each step, the darkness swallowing their flashlight beams. Eleanor leaned heavily on Emily, pausing every few moments as contractions racked her body. Each spasm brought a surge of blue light pulsing beneath her skin, illuminating the stairwell in brief. Eerie flashes. They're getting stronger, Eleanor gasped after a particularly intense contraction. And closer together, above them, they could hear Dr. Winters' muffled voice, engaging the council members who had entered the house. Her delaying tactics wouldn't work for long. At the bottom of the stairs, they found the stone corridor different than before, wider, the symbols on the walls glowing faintly blue, as if awakened by Eleanor's presence. The circular chamber with its stone altar waited, but now a previously hidden archway had appeared in the far wall, revealing a downward-sloping passage. "The final door," Emily whispered. It wasn't visible before. The passage led to a massive stone door, seamless except for a small bone-shaped indentation at its center. Surrounding it were carved inscriptions in a language neither sister recognized, though Eleanor felt a disturbing familiarity with the symbols, as if she should be able to read them. "This is as far as Dad ever got," Emily explained. "According to his notes, only Hayes blood with direct entity connection can open it." Eleanor pressed the bone key into the indentation, where it fit perfectly. Nothing happened. Blood and bone. She remembered her mother's note, wincing through another contraction. Taking the ceremonial knife from Emily, Eleanor pricked her finger, letting several drops fall onto the key. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The door illuminated with blue light, symbols activating in sequence around its perimeter. A deep rumbling shook the chamber as the massive stone began to slide sideways, revealing a darkness deeper and more absolute than anything they'd encountered. From that darkness emanated a cold that went beyond temperature, a cold that seemed to reach into the mind itself. Eleanor's baby responded with a powerful movement that doubled her over in pain. "We shouldn't go in there," Emily said, suddenly hesitant. "Mom warned us. We need answers," Eleanor insisted, straightening with effort. "Before they take my baby." They stepped through the doorway into a vast chamber that defied the physical dimensions of the house above. The ceiling soared impossibly high, lost in shadows. The walls curved in geometries that hurt the eyes to follow. At the chamber's center floated what appeared to be a tear in reality itself. A vertical rift, shimmering with blue-black energy, stars visible in the darkness beyond. "The nexus point," Emily breathed, "where our dimension intersects with wherever it's from." Eleanor approached slowly, drawn by an irresistible pull. The rift responded to her proximity, pulsing brighter, tendrils of energy reaching toward her like curious fingers. A voice spoke directly into their minds, and bypassing their ears entirely, neither male nor female, but ancient beyond comprehension, child of my lineage, bearer of my future. "You have come." Eleanor stood her ground despite her fear. "What are you? What do you want with my baby?" Images flooded her mind, a civilization beyond human understanding. Beings of pure energy and thought, a catastrophic collapse of dimensions, imprisonment, centuries of isolation, and finally, hope. Not imprisonment, the voice corrected, reading her thoughts. Sanctuary. Protection from the collapse of my world. Your ancestors found me wounded, weakened. Their fear led to misunderstanding. Their rituals became my prison. "You've been trying to escape," Emily accused. "I have been trying to evolve, to adapt, to become compatible with your reality, as mine is lost forever." The entity's voice carried a profound sadness. "Your child is neither my vessel nor my puppet, but the first of a new existence. Neither fully of my world nor yours, but a bridge between." Another contraction hit Eleanor, stronger than before, bringing her to her knees. The blue light now enveloped her completely. "The child comes soon," the entity observed. "The merging approaches." Footsteps echoed from the passage behind them. The council members had overcome Dr. Winter's delaying tactics and followed them down. Leading them was Walter Green, the neighbor carrying what appeared to be an ancient ritual dagger. "Step away from the rift, Eleanor," he commanded. "We cannot allow the birth to occur in its presence." 6 other town members spread out behind him, each representing one of the founding families. They wore ceremonial robes bearing their family crests, forming a semicircle that blocked the exit. "For generations, we've maintained the covenant," Walter continued. "Kept the balance between worlds. What grows inside you threatens everything. A hybrid that could shatter the barriers completely. You don't understand what it is," Eleanor protested through gritted teeth as another contraction hit. "We understand better than you think," countered an elderly woman. "Your father wasn't the first Hayes to believe he could control the entity. Each generation someone tries. Each time, the results are catastrophic." Walter withdrew an ancient journal from his robe, leather-bound and weathered by centuries. "The town founder's original account," he explained, seeing Eleanor's confusion. "Jonathan Green, my ancestor, documented everything." He opened the journal to a marked page, reading aloud, "The being from beyond seeks physical form. It cannot create its own in our world, but attempts to corrupt human vessels." Walter raised the ritual dagger, his expression hardened with generations of purpose. "Restrain her," he commanded the other council members. "The birth cannot happen in the entity's presence." 2 robed figures moved toward Eleanor, but Emily stepped between them. "Don't touch my sister. This goes beyond family loyalty, Emily," Walter warned. "This is about the covenant, about protecting our world." Eleanor collapsed to her knees, another contraction overwhelming her. The blue light emanating from her skin illuminated the chamber in pulses, growing stronger with each wave. The rift responded in kind, expanding and contracting like a heartbeat. "It's manipulating you," the elderly councilwoman insisted, her eyes wide with fear. "Can't you see? It's using your maternal instincts against you. Or perhaps," came Dr. Winter's voice from the passage as she pushed past the council members, "you're letting your fear cloud your judgment." Margaret, she moved to Eleanor's side, medical bag in hand. The birth is imminent. We need to focus on delivering this child safely, regardless of what comes after. Walter's grip tightened on the dagger. You overstep your bounds, Sarah. The council voted. A divided vote, Dr. Winters countered, with 3 members calling for observation before intervention. She turned to Eleanor. The contractions are less than a minute apart. When I tell you to push, push, the council members exchanged uncertain glances. Their unity fractured. Walter grew more agitated. We cannot allow this. The covenant is clear. From the rift came a surge of energy that knocked the ritual dagger from Walter's hand. It skittered across the stone floor, stopping at the feet of a figure none had noticed entering, Daniel Sullivan. Perhaps it's time for a new covenant, Daniel suggested, picking up the dagger. When based on understanding rather than fear, Walter's face contorted with rage. Traitor, you were sworn to secrecy. I was sworn to truth, Daniel corrected. Something this town abandoned generations ago in favor of control. He moved to stand beside Eleanor and Emily. When Dr. Hayes shared his research with me, I thought him mad. Now I see he glimpsed something the rest of you refused to consider, the possibility of harmony rather than eternal containment. The rift pulsed again, more strongly. Tendrils of blue energy reached toward Eleanor, not threatening but supportive, forming a protective cocoon around her. Within this energetic womb, her body levitated slightly above the stone floor, suspended in the entity's embrace. What's happening to her? Emily cried, reaching for her sister's hand. The entity is assisting the birth, Dr. Winters observed with clinical fascination. Stabilizing her, managing the pain. Eleanor's consciousness expanded beyond her physical form. She perceived the chamber from multiple perspectives simultaneously, her own limited human senses, the entity's vast multidimensional awareness, and something new, something between her child's emerging hybrid perception. In this expanded state, she understood what the entity had been trying to communicate. It wasn't malevolent or benign by human standards. Such concepts were meaningless to a being that experienced reality so differently. It was simply trying to survive the destruction of its home dimension, seeking adaptation rather than conquest. It doesn't want to destroy us, Eleanor gasped between contractions. It wants to evolve with us, Walter shook his head vehemently. That's what it wants you to believe. The texts warn of its deceptions. The texts, Daniel countered, were written by frightened humans interpreting something beyond their comprehension. What if we've been wrong all along? The council's resolve wavered. Further, as the blue energy cocoon around Eleanor intensified, Dr. Winters monitored her vitals with both medical instruments and ritual objects from her bag, a curious blend of science and occult practice. The baby's heartbeat is strong but unusual, she reported. Multiple rhythms overlapping. From his robe, Walter produced a small silver amulet inscribed with protective symbols. Enough debate. The protocol is clear. He began an incantation, the amulet glowing with a harsh white light that countered the entity's blue radiance. The effect on Eleanor was immediate and agonizing. She screamed as conflicting energies battled within and around her body. The baby responded with violent movement. "Stop!" Emily shouted. "You're hurting them both." Daniel lunged forward, knocking the amulet from Walter's grasp. In the struggle that followed, several council members joined Walter while others held back. The group's unity completely shattered. During this chaos, Dr. Winters pressed something into Eleanor's hand, a small, smooth stone amulet on a leather cord, its surface etched with symbols unlike those used by the council. "Protection," she whispered, "but of a different kind, balance rather than opposition. My grandmother passed this down. She believed in cooperation with the entity, not containment." The amulet warmed in Eleanor's palm, emitting a purple glow that somehow harmonized the conflicting blue and white energies. Relief flooded her system as the pain subsided to manageable levels. "Push now," Dr. Winters instructed. "The baby's crowning." Eleanor focused all her will on the birth, the entity's energy supporting her efforts. The chamber's very reality seemed to flex around them, dimensions bending as something unprecedented prepared to enter the world. The council's struggle against Daniel and Emily paused as a new sound filled the chamber, a baby's cry, but overlaid with an otherworldly harmonic that resonated through multiple frequencies. Blue light flared brilliantly, then stabilized. Dr. Winters lifted the newborn, wrapped in her jacket. The infant's skin glowed faintly from within, pulsing blue-white light that matched the rift's rhythm. Its eyes, when they opened, revealed irises of swirling cosmic patterns, stars and nebulae in miniature. "A girl," Dr. Winters announced, placing the baby in Eleanor's arms. The moment mother and child touched, a shockwave of energy radiated outward, knocking everyone except Eleanor to the ground. The rift contracted suddenly, then expanded in a controlled explosion of light that momentarily blinded all present. When vision returned, the rift had changed, no longer a tear but a structured portal, its edges defined and stable rather than chaotic. Through it came not cold emptiness, but a warm, benevolent presence. The entity's voice, when it spoke again, seemed clearer, more focused. "The bridge is born. The beginning, not the end." The infant gazed at her mother with impossible awareness, then turned toward the rift. A small, perfect hand reached toward it, trailing blue light. The entity responded with a tendril of energy that gently wrapped around the tiny fingers, like a handshake across dimensions. In that touch, everything changed. The days following the birth passed in a blur of hushed council meetings, whispered town gossip and uneasy watchfulness. Eleanor, Emily, and the baby, whom Eleanor named Aurora, remained in the Hayes house. Now under a tentative protection agreement negotiated by Dr. Winters, the town council was divided, its ancient unity fractured by Aurora's unprecedented nature. "They're afraid of her," Emily observed, as she watched Eleanor nurse the infant. Aurora's skin still glowed faintly from within, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat, though the effect was less pronounced than at birth. Her cosmic eyes tracked movements with unnerving awareness for a newborn. "They should be," Eleanor replied without looking up. "I'm a little afraid myself." Since the birth, Eleanor had experienced continued expansion of consciousness, flashes of perception beyond normal human senses, moments of seeing through Aurora's hybrid awareness. The connection to the entity remained, though changed, more structured. Daniel arrived that afternoon with a visitor, a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked dark hair and intense, knowing eyes. "This is Professor Lydia Chambers from Miskatonic University," he explained. "Anthropology and comparative religion, specializing in dimensional anomalies." "You mean she studies things like the entity?" Emily asked skeptically. I study nexus points where different realities intersect," Lydia corrected. "Places where the walls between dimensions grow thin." She set her briefcase on the kitchen table. "When Daniel contacted me about what happened here, I recognized the pattern immediately. From the briefcase, she produced an ancient map unlike any they'd seen, not of geographical locations, but of energy patterns spanning the globe. Willow Creek appeared as a bright intersection point of multiple lines, ley lines," Lydia explained. "Channels of Earth energy that indigenous cultures worldwide recognized. Your town sits at a particularly powerful convergence, one of perhaps a dozen worldwide, where interdimensional contact is possible." Eleanor studied the map, Aurora cradled in one arm. The baby reached toward the parchment, her tiny fingers trailing blue light that caused the ley lines to momentarily intensify. "She's responding to it," Lydia noted with clinical interest. "Fascinating. What does this mean for Aurora?" Eleanor asked. "For us? It means your child exists at a unique junction between realities, neither fully human nor fully other." Lydia's expression softened. "It also means she's not the first hybrid being in human history, though perhaps the most complete integration we've seen." She produced several ancient texts from her briefcase, fragments of manuscripts in languages ranging from Sanskrit to Proto-Germanic, each containing illustrations remarkably similar to the entity's rift. Throughout history, there have been accounts of beings crossing between worlds, of children born with star eyes or souls of light. Most were feared, some worshipped, many hidden away. Lydia's gaze fixed on Aurora. Your daughter represents something these accounts only hinted at, a true bridge between dimensions. The council wants to contain her, Emily said. Some want to separate her from Eleanor entirely. Predictable but short-sighted, Lydia replied. Based on my research, forced separation would likely destabilize both the child and the dimensional boundary. Your town's covenant has been maintaining a delicate balance, not simply imprisoning an entity. From upstairs came the sound of Aurora crying, except Eleanor still held her. The sisters exchanged alarmed glances. The entity, Eleanor whispered. Racing upstairs, they found the blue light pulsing from beneath the nursery floorboards, accompanied by sounds like distant crying. It's mimicking Aurora, Emily realized, responding to her emotions. No, Eleanor corrected, her expanded awareness understanding something deeper. It's not mimicry, it's resonance. They're connected on a fundamental level. What affects one affects the other. Later that evening, with Aurora finally sleeping, Lydia laid out her theory. The entity isn't simply trying to escape or reproduce. It's trying to establish a stable connection between dimensions, one that won't collapse catastrophically as its home world did. And Aurora is that connection? Daniel asked. Aurora is the first step, Lydia clarified. A living bridge that can exist in both realities simultaneously without destroying either. But the council, Emily began, is trapped in outdated thinking, Lydia finished. Their containment rituals were necessary when the entity first arrived, traumatized and unstable. But evolution was always the natural outcome, not eternal imprisonment. Eleanor felt Aurora awakening through their connection. But what does this mean for her future? Will she be human? Something else entirely? Both and neither, Lydia answered. She'll forge her own path between worlds. The question is whether your town will allow that path to develop naturally or try to control it, potentially with catastrophic consequences. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Winters entered, looking grave. The council has voted. Walter and the traditionalists won by one vote. She handed Eleanor an ancient leather-bound book. They're coming tomorrow to perform the separation ritual. This contains the full ceremony, including its weaknesses. They want to take my baby, Eleanor stated flatly. They want to place her in a specialized containment chamber beneath the town hall, where the entity's influence can be properly managed. Dr. Winter's disgust was evident. They believe she's too dangerous to remain with you. And what do you believe? Eleanor challenged. I believe forced separation will damage both Aurora and the dimensional boundary. But more importantly, she added softly, I believe no child should be taken from her mother. Daniel moved to the window, watching for watchers. We need to leave town immediately. They'll follow, Emily argued. The Covenant families have resources, connections. Not if we give them something more pressing to worry about, Lydia suggested, her expression resolute. I've studied these nexus points for decades. I know how to create a controlled disruption, nothing dangerous, but enough to keep the council occupied while you escape. Where would we go? Eleanor asked, clutching Aurora closer. There's a research facility in Colorado, Lydia explained. Privately funded, dedicated to studying dimensional phenomena without governmental or religious interference. You'd be protected there while we learn more about Aurora's unique nature. As they discussed escape plans, Aurora opened her cosmic eyes, gazing at something beyond normal perception. Blue light pulsed briefly around her tiny form. Through their connection, Eleanor felt not fear, but determination from her impossibly aware infant daughter. The entity responded from below, a low harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate with a simple message. The bridge must stand. The path must open. Night brought no respite from the day's revelations. Eleanor sat in the nursery rocking chair, Aurora nestled against her chest, both bathed in the soft blue glow that seemed to intensify in darkness. Outside, more vehicles had gathered along Willow Lane, council members and their supporters preparing for tomorrow's confrontation. "Try to sleep," Emily urged, appearing in the doorway. I'll watch over Aurora," Eleanor shook her head. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see images, memories that aren't mine. The entity's homeworld, I think. A civilization of beings made of light and thought. The collapse of their dimension." She stroked Aurora's wispy hair. "And glimpses of what Aurora might become. What do you see?" Emily asked softly. "A bridge between worlds. A translator, a healer, almost." Eleanor struggled to articulate concepts that existed beyond human language. "The entity doesn't want to invade our world. It wants to share knowledge, exchange understanding. Aurora is the first being capable of fully comprehending both realities." From the basement came a soft, rhythmic pulsing, like a heartbeat perfectly synchronized with Aurora's. The infant stirred in her sleep, tiny fingers grasping at invisible energies. "The connection is getting stronger," Eleanor observed. "It's like they're stabilizing each other somehow." Emily sat on the window seat watching the vehicles outside. "Lydia thinks we should leave before dawn. Daniel's arranged transportation, and Dr. Winters? She'll create a diversion at the council meeting. Buy us time." Emily hesitated. "Eleanor, there's something else you should know. While you were resting earlier, Lydia and I explored the attic. We found something unusual from a canvas bag." Emily withdrew a set of strange implements wrapped in aged cloth, silver and bone instruments with curved edges and crystalline components, each inscribed with familiar symbols. "Birthing tools," Emily explained, "but not for ordinary births. They're designed specifically for entity-influenced pregnancies." Eleanor recognized them immediately, though she'd never seen them before. "The Hayes family midwife tools, passed down for generations. How did you know that?" Emily asked, startled. "I just know. The entity's knowledge filtering through." Eleanor examined the implements. They were created to ease the transition of hybrid children into our physical dimension, to prevent the shock of our reality from overwhelming their dual nature. Emily stared at her sister. "Your connection to the entity is growing stronger too, isn't it?" Eleanor nodded slowly. "I understand things I shouldn't, see patterns that weren't clear before." She touched one of the bone implements, which began to glow faintly in response. "Our ancestors knew more than the Covenant admits. They weren't just containing the entity, they were working with it, learning from it, until fear took over," Emily concluded. "Until containment became imprisonment." Aurora stirred, making soft sounds unlike typical infant noises, harmonic tones that resonated with the pulsing from below. The house itself seemed to respond, subtle vibrations running through the walls and floors. "She's dreaming of both worlds," Eleanor whispered, "existing in two realities simultaneously." A sudden, sharp knock at the front door startled them both. Through their upstairs window, they saw Walter Green on the porch, flanked by two council members. Despite the late hour, they wore formal attire, carrying what appeared to be ritual implements. "They're early," Emily hissed. "The separation wasn't scheduled until tomorrow." "Plans change," came Lydia's voice as she hurried into the nursery. A faction of the council decided to act immediately, without waiting for the formal vote. She carried her bag, already packed. "We need to leave, now." Eleanor rose, clutching Aurora closer. "Through the back door." "They've surrounded the house," Daniel reported, appearing behind Lydia. "All exits covered." "Then we go below," Eleanor decided with sudden certainty. "Through the entity's chamber." "That's suicide," Daniel protested. "The dimensional rift is unstable. You could be trapped between worlds." "No," Eleanor countered, her voice taking on a strange resonance. "Not with Aurora. She stabilizes the passage." She looked down at her daughter, whose cosmic eyes had opened, fully aware. "She knows the way." The pounding on the front door grew more insistent. Wood splintered as someone began forcing entry. "We don't have a choice," Emily conceded, quickly gathering essential supplies while Lydia collected her research materials. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "I'll delay them as long as possible." As they hurried toward the basement door, Aurora began to glow more intensely, her light pulsing in a complex pattern that seemed to communicate directly with the entity below. The house responded with subtle shifts in its architecture, doorways widening slightly. The basement stairs straightening for easier descent. "She's reshaping reality around her," Lydia observed with academic wonder. "Bending dimensional barriers." In the circular chamber with its stone altar, the rift had changed again, expanding into a stable archway of blue-white light. Beyond it stretched not the cold void they had seen before, but a structured passage, like a tunnel of interweaving energies. A safe path, Eleanor understood instinctively. "The entity is helping us escape." From above came sounds of confrontation, Daniel's voice raised in argument, Walter's angry response, the crash of furniture. They had minutes at most. "Are you certain about this?" Emily asked, staring dubiously at the glowing tunnel. "No," Eleanor admitted, "but I'm certain about what happens if we stay." Aurora reached toward the rift with unmistakable purpose, trailing blue energy from her tiny fingers. In response, the tunnel entrance pulsed as if beckoning. "It's not taking us to the entity's dimension," Eleanor explained, sensing the truth through her connection. "It's creating a passage through the dimensional boundaries to another location in our world. Somewhere safe. The Colorado Research Facility," Lydia realized. "Somehow it knows." The chamber shook as heavy footsteps descended the basement stairs. Walter's voice echoed down the stone corridor. "Eleanor Hayes! By authority of the Covenant, surrender the child." Aurora's glow intensified, her expression one of impossible determination for a newborn. The rift responded, the passage stabilizing further. "Now or never," Emily urged, stepping to Eleanor's side. With Aurora cradled securely against her chest, Eleanor took a deep breath and stepped into the glowing threshold between worlds. Her sister and Lydia close behind, the entity's energy enveloped them like a protective cocoon, guiding them forward. The last thing Eleanor heard before the passage closed behind them was Walter's cry of rage and disbelief, the sound of centuries of control slipping away in a single, blinding moment of change. The dimensional passage deposited them on a mountainside overlooking a sprawling research complex, a cluster of modern buildings nestled against ancient rock formations. Dawn was breaking over the Colorado Rockies, painting the sky in hues that mirrored Aurora's cosmic eyes. "How?" Emily gasped, disoriented by the instantaneous transition across thousands of miles. "Dimensional folding," Lydia explained, her academic demeanor returning despite their extraordinary journey. "The entity created a temporary bridge between 2 points in our reality." Eleanor hardly heard them, focused on Aurora. The infant appeared drained by the passage, her usual glow dimmed to a faint shimmer beneath her skin. "She needs rest," Eleanor murmured. The journey took a toll. The research facility welcomed them with surprising readiness, as if their arrival had been anticipated. Dr. Marcus Chen, the director, greeted them personally, his calm acceptance of Aurora's nature providing immediate reassurance. "We've monitored the Willow Creek Nexus for decades," he explained as they settled into a secure residential wing. "When Lydia contacted us about Aurora, we prepared accordingly." The days that followed brought a cautious routine. Morning examinations of Aurora by specialists in both conventional medicine and dimensional physics. Afternoons spent documenting Eleanor's expanding awareness and connection to the entity. Evenings devoted to strategizing their response to the inevitable pursuit by the town council. "Walter won't give up," Eleanor insisted during one such session. "The Covenant has defined his family for generations, which is why we need to understand exactly what we're facing," Dr. Chen replied, spreading documents across the conference table. "The Covenant's origins, its true purpose, its limitations." Lydia had been translating the ancient grimoire Dr. Winters had given them. comparing its accounts with other dimensional incidents throughout history. The Covenant wasn't just about containment, she explained. It was a compromise between two realities trying to interact without destroying each other. Until fear transformed it into imprisonment, Emily added precisely. Lydia pointed to passages in multiple texts. Every few generations, the entity attempted communication through compatible bloodlines, usually Hayes children with particular genetic markers. The Covenant families interpreted these attempts as infiltration, responding with increasingly restrictive measures, breaking the natural evolution of the relationship, Dr. Chen concluded. On the seventh day, as Aurora's strength returned, they received a warning from Daniel. The council had tracked them to Colorado and was mobilizing. Walter had convinced federal authorities that Eleanor had kidnapped Aurora, whom he claimed was his granddaughter. Leveraging old connections to justify the pursuit. We have 3 days at most, Dr. Chen estimated grimly. That night, as Eleanor rocked Aurora to sleep, the infant's glow suddenly intensified. Through their connection, Eleanor received not images but understanding, a complex, multidimensional concept impossible to articulate in human language, but crystal clear in her mind. She knows what we need to do, Eleanor told the others the next morning. The entity is communicating through her, under Aurora's guidance. They began gathering components for what Eleanor could only describe as a stabilization ritual. Not the Covenant's repressive ceremonies, but something older, more balanced. From the facility's extensive collections of artifacts from dimensional nexus points worldwide, Aurora indicated specific items needed: crystals with particular resonance patterns, metals with unusual conductive properties, organic elements that interface between physical and energy states. She's creating a new kind of bridge, Lydia realized as the pattern emerged. One that doesn't require her physical presence to maintain. A permanent, stable connection between realities, Dr. Chen concurred, excitement overriding scientific detachment. Controlled, contained, but open for communication and exchange. While the scientists focused on physical components, Emily worked with Eleanor to prepare the ritual space, a circular chamber in the facility's lowest level, built upon a natural convergence of ley lines similar to but less intense than Willow Creek's nexus. Aurora will be at the center, Eleanor explained, knowledge flowing through her connection. I'll stand as anchor to our reality, while the entity serves as anchor to its dimension. And the risk? Emily demanded, protective instincts flaring. Eleanor hesitated. If the connection fails during formation, Aurora could be trapped between worlds, neither here nor there, lost in the void. That's too dangerous, Emily protested. There must be another way. There isn't, Eleanor replied softly. And it's already happening. Aurora is the bridge, whether we conduct this ritual or not. The question is whether we help stabilize that connection or let it develop chaotically. As final preparations commenced, security alerts indicated the council's approach. Walter had arrived in Denver, accompanied by 3 other Covenant family representatives and what appeared to be federal agents, though Dr. Chen suspected their credentials might not withstand scrutiny. Tomorrow night is optimal, Lydia determined, checking astronomical calculations. When the dimensional membrane thins naturally during the equinox, Eleanor nodded, feeling both dread and certainty. Tomorrow night, then. That evening, as security tightened around the facility, Eleanor sat with Aurora in the prepared chamber, surrounded by meticulously arranged ritual components. The infant's cosmic eyes studied each item with impossible comprehension, her tiny hands occasionally directing adjustments to positioning with trailing blue light. "Are you sure about this?" Emily asked from the doorway, voice tight with worry. "No," Eleanor admitted. "But Aurora is." She gazed down at her daughter, who returned her look with ancient wisdom in infant eyes. "She understands what she is, what she's becoming, better than any of us." From a leather pouch, Eleanor withdrew the final components needed, herbs, crystals, and mineral powders collected from nexus points worldwide. Aurora's guidance had been specific. her knowledge transcending her days-old existence. Tomorrow night, Eleanor whispered to her extraordinary child, we create a new covenant. Aurora's response came not in words, but in waves of emotion and understanding through their connection, determination tinged with anticipation, fear balanced by purpose, and above all, a profound sense of rightness, of cosmic puzzle pieces finally aligning after centuries of misalignment. Outside the facility, storm clouds gathered unnaturally in the clear mountain sky. Reality already beginning to flex around the imminent convergence of worlds. Dawn arrived with escalating tensions. Security monitors showed vehicles approaching the facility's perimeter. Black SUVs with government markings. Accompanied by unmarked cars, Dr. Chen mobilized his security team while final preparations for the evening's ritual continued with increasing urgency there. Still 12 hours from optimal alignment, Lydia noted, checking astronomical calculations against energy readings from the ritual chamber. We need to hold them off until nightfall. Eleanor barely registered the conversation. Her awareness split between multiple realities, their physical surroundings, Aurora's consciousness, and the entity reaching across dimensions in preparation for the convergence. The blue lines had reappeared on her skin, climbing her arms like luminous vines, pulsing in rhythm with both Aurora and the distant entity. Eleanor? Emily's voice pulled her back. You're drifting again. Sorry, Eleanor murmured. The boundaries are thinning already. It's getting harder to stay fully here. Emily's concern was evident. Is that safe? Before Eleanor could answer, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security monitors showed the perimeter breach, Walter and his entourage approaching the main entrance, accompanied by uniformed officers. Federal credentials, Dr. Chen confirmed grimly. Legitimate ones, apparently. They have a court order for Aurora's removal to protective custody pending investigation. They're going to take my baby, Eleanor whispered, clutching Aurora closer. The infant's cosmic eyes surveyed the room with unsettling calmness, as if she'd anticipated this development. Not if we complete the ritual first, Lydia insisted. Once the new bridge is established, separating Aurora from the entity will be impossible without catastrophic consequences they can't ignore. Dr. Chen nodded. We'll delay them through legal means, demand verification, request supervisor presence, procedural challenges. My security team has instructions. As facility staff engage the federal agents in bureaucratic obstacles, Eleanor, Emily, and Lydia retreated to the ritual chamber, sealing its reinforced doors. Aurora's glow intensified as they entered the circular room with its carefully arranged components. Responding to the convergence of energies. We need more time, Lydia lamented, checking readings on specialized equipment. The alignment is still hours away. A soft knock at the chamber door startled them. Dr. Chen's voice came through the intercom. Eleanor? They have the paperwork. I can't legally hold them off much longer. Let me talk to them, Emily suggested suddenly. I can create a distraction, buy us time. It's too dangerous, Eleanor protested. I'm her aunt, Emily countered. I have standing to question their authority. And I know how Walter thinks. I can keep him arguing in circles. After a moment's hesitation, Eleanor reluctantly agreed. Emily embraced her sister tightly before slipping out of the chamber, the door resealing behind her. Through security monitors, they watched Emily engage Walter and the federal agents in the facility's main conference room. Her legal argument seemed effective initially, creating the needed delay as the hours crept toward evening. But as the confrontation continued, Eleanor noticed something troubling. Emily's body language had shifted, her gestures becoming more accommodating. When she stepped aside to speak privately with Walter, their conversation appeared less adversarial than conspiratorial. Something's wrong, Eleanor murmured, a cold sensation spreading through her that had nothing to do with dimensional energies. The facility intercom crackled to life with Dr. Chen's urgent voice. Eleanor! They're bypassing security protocols. Someone gave them access codes. On the monitor, Emily avoided eye contact with the camera as she led Walter and two agents toward the restricted elevator that would bring them directly to the ritual chamber. Emily betrayed us. Lydia whispered in disbelief. Eleanor felt strangely calm, understanding flowing through her expanded awareness. Not betrayal, fear. Through their connection, Aurora conveyed comprehension beyond her infant form. Emily had made a choice born of protective instinct, believing cooperation offered better odds than resistance. The elevator indicator showed their imminent arrival. With minutes remaining, Eleanor placed Aurora in the center of the ritual circle, surrounded by the carefully arranged components. "It's too early," Lydia protested. "The alignment, we have no choice," Eleanor interrupted, taking her position. "Begin the sequence." As Lydia activated the initial harmonics, Eleanor closed her eyes, reaching across dimensions to the entity waiting on the other side. Its presence responded immediately, eager for connection despite the premature timing. The chamber doors slid open. Walter entered first, his expression a mixture of triumph and righteous certainty. Behind him came Emily, her eyes downcast, and two federal agents with hands on their holstered weapons. "Stop this immediately," Walter commanded, producing an ancient parchment bearing the Covenant family sigil. "By authority of the original compact, I claim custodial rights to the hybrid child." Emily finally met Eleanor's gaze. "I'm sorry, Ellie, but this is the only way to protect Aurora. Walter has agreed to modified containment. She'll remain with you under Covenant supervision. The alternative was federal custody, scientific experimentation." "You don't understand what you've done," Eleanor replied softly. Walter approached the ritual circle with determined steps. "The child comes with us now. The entity remains contained in Willow Creek, where it belongs. The natural order restored." Before anyone could stop him, Walter stepped over the boundary of the ritual circle, reaching for Aurora. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Blue energy flared from both infant and circle components, engulfing Walter in crackling dimensional energy. He screamed, his body contorting as conflicting realities tore through him. "The circle is active," Lydia shouted over the rising harmonic resonance. "No one else crossed the boundary." Too late, Emily rushed forward, desperate to pull Walter back. The moment she crossed the threshold, the blue energy enveloped her too. Unlike Walter, she made no sound. Her eyes simply widened in shock as her body began to dissolve into motes of blue-white light. "Emily!" Eleanor cried, instinctively moving toward her sister, only to be restrained by Lydia's grip. "You can't leave your position," Lydia warned. "The entire ritual will collapse." Through streaming tears, Eleanor maintained her stance as anchor. Emily's gaze locked with hers in a final moment of clarity before her physical form completely transformed into pure energy, flowing like luminous water toward Aurora at the circle's center. The federal agents retreated in horror, abandoning Walter, whose body continued its grotesque transformation, not dissolving like Emily's, but warping into something neither fully human nor fully other, trapped between states of being. At the circle's center, Aurora absorbed the energy that had been Emily, her glow intensifying beyond bearable brightness. Through their connection, Eleanor felt her daughter's understanding. Emily had become part of the bridge, her essence woven into the emerging structure between dimensions. Not death, but transformation. Not ending, but evolution. As the chamber filled with blinding blue-white light, Eleanor heard the entity's voice one final time before the convergence reached its crescendo. The sacrifice completes the circle. The bridge stands. The path opens. Reality fractured and reassembled itself around them. The ritual chamber's physical boundaries dissolved as dimensional energies surged through the prematurely activated components. Aurora floated at the epicenter, her tiny form radiating blue-white light with such intensity that she appeared more energy than matter. What remained of Walter had collapsed into a twisted, moaning figure caught between realities, neither transformed like Emily nor anchored like Eleanor. The federal agents had fled, leaving only Lydia maintaining her position at the edge of the ritual circle, frantically adjusting equipment to stabilize the chaotic energies. "The resonance is destabilizing," she shouted over the rising harmonic vibrations that threatened to tear the chamber apart. "We can't control it." Eleanor hardly heard her. Through her expanded consciousness, she perceived Emily's essence, not gone, but transformed, woven into the emerging bridge between dimensions. Simultaneously, she felt the entity surging forward with almost desperate eagerness, centuries of containment giving way to the promise of connection. "Too fast," Eleanor gasped, understanding the danger. "The convergence is happening too quickly." Aurora's cosmic eyes locked with Eleanor's, conveying understanding beyond her infant form. Through their connection, Eleanor received not words, but pure conceptual knowledge. The bridge required a counterbalance, something to regulate the flow between dimensions, prevent catastrophic collapse. From her position, Eleanor could see the ceremonial dagger that had fallen from Walter's grasp when he entered the circle, an ancient artifact of the original covenant, its blade inscribed with symbols of both binding and release, understanding crystallized. "The knife!" Eleanor called to Lydia. "I need the dagger!" Lydia hesitated, then carefully slid the weapon across the floor to Eleanor's position, never crossing the circle's boundary herself. When Eleanor grasped the handle, the blade ignited with blue fire that didn't burn, dimensional energy responding to contact with Hayes' blood. Through Aurora, the entity's voice resonated. "Blood seals. Blood breaks. Blood transforms." With sudden clarity, Eleanor understood what was required. Drawing the blade across her palm, she allowed her blood to flow along the ancient metal, activating symbols that had been dormant for generations. The dagger pulsed with renewed purpose, its original function finally revealed, not a weapon of subjugation, but a tool of regulation. A valve, she realized aloud. The Covenant was never meant to be a prison. It was a control mechanism to prevent dimensional collapse. As her blood coated the blade, Eleanor felt Emily's essence respond within the swirling energies. Recognition, purpose, acceptance. Her sister hadn't been destroyed, but transformed into a crucial component of the bridge, her human consciousness providing an essential anchor between realities. With determination born of desperate necessity, Eleanor plunged the bloody dagger into the floor, at the precise center of her position in the ritual. The effect was immediate. The chaotic energies stabilized, channeling through the blade into ordered flows. The blue-white light coalesced into distinct streams, connecting Aurora to both Eleanor and the dimensional rift that had formed on the chamber's far wall. Through this momentary stability, Eleanor glimpsed the entity's home dimension, not cold void, but vibrant reality of pure energy and consciousness, beautiful in its alien geometry. Within it, countless beings of light observed the forming connection, their collective awareness focused on the bridge taking shape. "They're helping," Eleanor realized. "The entity isn't alone, it's part of a civilization." Aurora's tiny body began to pulse rhythmically, each wave sending ripples through both realities. The infant was changing, not physically, but dimensionally, her existence stretching across the boundary between worlds. Neither fully human nor fully other, but genuinely both. Walter's twisted form lurched suddenly toward Aurora, his consciousness apparently restored enough for one final act of desperate conviction. "Must maintain covenant," he gasped, reaching for the child with distorted limbs. Acting on instinct, Eleanor yanked the ceremonial dagger from the floor and thrust it toward Walter, not to strike him, but to complete the circuit. The blade pierced the space between his outstretched hand and Aurora, intercepting the dimensional energies flowing between them. Walter froze, his form stabilizing as the dagger channeled the chaotic energies through his body. His eyes cleared momentarily, awareness returning as understanding dawned. All these generations, he whispered, we misunderstood. The dagger began to glow with increasing intensity, absorbing the conflicting energies that had trapped Walter between states. His form gradually solidified, returning to human appearance, though his eyes now held the same cosmic awareness as Aurora's. The bridge needs anchors on both sides, he realized, voice steadying. Human consciousness to interpret, to translate. His gaze met Eleanor's with newfound clarity. Your sister understood at the end. She chose this. As Walter spoke, the ceremonial dagger transformed in Eleanor's grip, its metal reshaping into an intricate key of intertwined materials, part metal, part crystal, part living energy. The Covenant's true purpose revealed in physical form. The key that locks and unlocks. The entity's voice resonated through Aurora. Not imprisonment, regulation, balance. Understanding flowed through Eleanor's expanded consciousness. The original covenant had been created not to imprison the entity, but to establish controlled communication between dimensions. Over generations, fear had corrupted its purpose, transforming regulation into containment. With the key's formation, the chaotic energies settled into stable, rhythmic flows. Aurora descended gently to the floor, her glow diminishing to a gentle luminescence that pulsed in harmony with the dimensional gateway, now permanently established in the chamber. The air shimmered as a figure began to form beside Aurora. Emily, or something that had once been Emily, her form translucent and suffused with blue-white light. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic overtones that resonated on multiple frequencies. It worked, she said simply, her smile both familiar and alien. The bridge stands. Eleanor reached toward her sister's luminous form, tears streaming down her face. Emily, what have you become? Translator, Emily replied. Interpreter. I exist in both realities now, neither fully human nor fully other. She gestured to Walter, who stood transformed but solid. He anchors one end of the bridge. I maintain its structure. Aurora is its heart, the first true hybrid who can walk freely between worlds. The ceremonial key floated from Eleanor's hand to hover between the three transformed beings, Walter, Emily and Aurora, completing the circuit that maintained dimensional stability. And me? Eleanor asked softly. You remain fully human, Emily answered, but connected. Our family's purpose fulfilled at last, not as jailers, but as ambassadors. As reality settled into its new configuration, Eleanor felt the entity's presence recede, not departing, but establishing proper distance. The regulated connection functioning as originally intended centuries before. Aurora reached for her mother with perfectly human need, her cosmic eyes holding both infinite awareness and simple infant love. As Eleanor gathered her daughter in her arms, she understood that their journey had only just begun. 1 year later, Eleanor stood on the porch of a modest mountain home, watching Aurora take her first steps across the lawn. The child looked entirely human now, her cosmic eyes and glowing skin apparent only in certain light or moments of heightened emotion. To casual observers, she appeared to be a normal toddler, albeit precocious in her development. Dr. Chen's research facility had become their home, its purpose transformed from study to stewardship of the interdimensional gateway now permanently established in the specialized chamber below. The federal agencies that had once sought Aurora's custody now maintained a respectful distance, their initial fear replaced by cautious cooperation following demonstrations of the gateway's potential benefits. She's growing so fast, Lydia remarked, joining Eleanor on the porch. The professor had remained to document the unprecedented dimensional phenomena, her academic pursuits evolving into something more personal, a kind of honorary aunt to Aurora. In more ways than one, Eleanor replied, watching her daughter examine a butterfly with intense focus, her tiny fingers briefly trailing blue light as she communicated with the creature in ways beyond human perception. The sound of approaching footsteps drew their attention to Walter emerging from the tree line. His appearance restored to normal except for his eyes, the same cosmic patterns as Aurora's, though muted. In the months since the gateway's stabilization, he had adjusted to his role as anchor with surprising grace, his generations of covenant adherence providing structure for this new purpose. "The town council has voted," he announced, climbing the steps. "Willow Creek has officially recognized the new compact. The entity's chamber will be properly maintained, but no longer sealed." Eleanor nodded, relief evident. The negotiations had been delicate, centuries of fear and tradition, resisting the truth of what the entity truly represented. "And the Hayes house, designated as a secondary nexus point to be preserved, Dr. Winters will oversee its maintenance." Walter's expression softened as he watched Aurora. "Our ancestors would barely recognize what we've become. Yet somehow, I think this was always the intended outcome. Cooperation rather than containment." From inside the house came a familiar harmonic resonance, Emily manifesting for her daily visit. Unlike Walter, she existed primarily as energy now, able to take solid form only temporarily and with considerable effort. Her consciousness spent most of its time within the dimensional bridge, learning the language and customs of the entity's civilization. "Aunt Em," Aurora called out with delight, abandoning the butterfly to toddle quickly back to the house, her excitement causing brief flickers of blue light beneath her skin. Inside, Emily's translucent form knelt to embrace her niece, momentarily solidifying at the contact. "Hello, little bridge," she greeted with affection, her voice carrying subtle harmonic undertones. Eleanor watched them with a bittersweet smile. Emily's transformation had been the most difficult adjustment, neither truly gone nor fully present, existing in a state between human and other. Yet in that liminal existence, she had found purpose that seemed to bring her joy, serving as translator and guide between realities. "I've brought something," Emily announced, producing a small, shimmering object that solidified as she handed it to Aurora. "Your first passport between worlds." The object resembled a simple photograph, but not of any earthly scene. It depicted a landscape of pure energy and geometric patterns, beautiful in its alien complexity. As Aurora touched it, the image responded, its colors shifting in recognition of her hybrid nature. "A visualization anchor," Emily explained to the adults. "It helps her focus when she begins crossing dimensional boundaries mentally. She's still too young for physical transition, but her consciousness already bridges both realities." Eleanor felt the familiar twist of maternal worry. "Is it safe for her to begin so early?" "Safer than delaying," Emily assured her. "Her dual nature requires nurturing from both sides to develop properly. The entity's elders are eager to begin sharing knowledge tailored to her unique perception." Later that evening, after Aurora had fallen asleep clutching her dimensional passport, Eleanor sat alone on the porch, watching stars emerge across the mountain sky. A gentle blue glow appeared beside her as Emily manifested again, her form more ethereal at this late hour. "Something troubles you," Emily observed. "Not a question." Eleanor sighed. "I sometimes wonder if we did the right thing. Aurora will never have a normal life. Normal by whose definition?" Emily's form shimmered with subtle amusement. "She's the first of something new, Ellie, a true bridge between worlds. Her life won't be normal, but it will be extraordinary. And when she grows up, will she choose to remain human or—" "That will be her decision," Emily replied gently. "But she'll never have to choose completely between worlds. That's the gift we've given her. The ability to belong to both." From Aurora's room came a soft blue glow, pulsing gently as the child dreamed. Through the connection they still shared, Eleanor caught glimpses of those dreams, impossible landscapes. Beings of pure energy, concepts beyond human language, all filtered through a child's innocent wonder. "She dreams of both worlds," Eleanor whispered. "As she should," Emily agreed. "It's who she is." The entity's communication came less frequently now, the regulated connection functioning as intended, respectful exchanges rather than desperate attempts at freedom. Through Aurora and Emily, knowledge flowed in both directions, each civilization learning from the other across the dimensional divide. On the mantelpiece inside sat the most treasured artifact of their journey, a family photograph taken just last week. Eleanor and Aurora in the foreground, Walter standing slightly behind them, and Emily's translucent form beside them, temporarily solidified for the image. A family transformed, but not broken, changed but still connected, unlike the shadowy figure in the old Hayes family portrait. This photograph contained no secrets, no hidden presences, no shame or fear, just the honest reality of what they had become. The first family to fully embrace the Covenant's true purpose, bridging worlds with understanding rather than separating them with fear. As midnight approached, Eleanor felt the familiar resonance as the dimensional gateway below the facility conducted its nightly exchange. Knowledge, art and understanding flowing between realities like water, finding its natural level. Aurora stirred briefly in her sleep, responding to the harmonic vibrations that were as much a part of her as her human heartbeat. Standing in the doorway of her daughter's room, Eleanor watched the gentle rise and fall of Aurora's chest, the occasional flicker of blue light beneath her eyelids as she dreamed of both her worlds. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever choices Aurora would eventually face, Eleanor felt a profound certainty that they had broken a cycle of fear that had persisted for centuries. The truth hadn't been buried beneath the house after all. It had been buried within the Covenant itself, the knowledge that different realities could coexist without destruction. That understanding could replace fear, that bridges served better than walls. As the mountain night wrapped around them like a protective embrace, Eleanor whispered a truth that spanned dimensions. "Sweet dreams, my bridge between worlds."